Real Enigmas and Theories is back again with another video. Alright y'all, let's talk about Severance on Apple TV. This show is straight up fire, top of my list right now for 2025. A corporate fever dream where your work self and your home self don't even know each other. Imagine clocking into work and the second you step into the office, boom, you become a split version of yourself, severed. This version of you is called your Innie. It's stuck in a corny maze of awkward small talk and 80s style furniture with no clue of what your outside life is like. Your Innie never leaves the building. No weekends, no days off, no Netflix, just endless office drama and cryptic corporate slogans like the work is mysterious and important. Meanwhile, your Outie doesn't even remember work or know what it is that you actually do, completely unaware that your Innie is basically a 9-to-5 prisoner. Crazy part is the procedure requires you to get a chip put inside your head. And the whole thing is going down at Lumon Industries, the shady corporation that gives off weird cult vibes. You know, Lumon as in Illuminati. Severance is full of dope esoteric symbolism, hidden meanings, intriguing mysteries with a fire cast of brilliant actors and production. We're gonna go over some of the esoteric symbolism baked into Severance and see if we can reveal some of the hidden messaging. But before we do that, go ahead and tap that screen a couple of times, do all that dope YouTube stuff, and if you're new here, welcome. I hope this video makes you stick around for a while. So let's pull out those magnifying glasses. We're going to be talking about the entire first season of the show Severance and a little bit of the Lexington Letters. So if you haven't seen it yet, stop the video and go catch up. So with that being said, let's cook. So we have Mark, who's like the friend that you asked to go to the party with you. They say yes, but you can tell they really didn't want to go. And then they confirm it when they get there and pretty much disconnect from everything at the party. But you're not really mad with them because you know what's going on. And that's why you asked them to come in the first place, because you was trying to help your friend. You see, Mark signed up for Severance to escape some grief. It turns out that losing your wife will do that to a man. And now he's figured that turning himself off for 8 hours a day will heal him. But it's been 2 years and he's still feeling it. Then we have Helly. She's the new hire and her whole attitude is like,
this is some straight up horror movie bullshit.
And she tries to quit only for her Outie to be like,
nah, you're staying.
Then we have Dylan, who's pretty much occupied himself with obtaining perks like literal finger traps and waffle parties. Yeah, they're handing out waffle parties as rewards at work. Oh yeah, you also get a freaky Masonic striptease dance with some whips and syrup. And we can't forget about Milchick, Lumon's overly enthusiastic supervisor who's like a cross between a cheerleader and a prison ward. And this dude is always smiling and grinning and shit like Mr. Crockett. Then we've got Irv and Bert. Irv is played by John Turturro, and he's the by-the-book teacher's pet type of motherfucker. And he discovers an unexpected, tender connection with Bert, who's played by Christopher Walken. Who would have thought that Frank White would have been hooking up with Carmine Falcone? But it does push the story forward by giving us a clue that even severed individuals' tendencies can pass through the severed effects and present themselves through the Innie. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Then there's Petey, Mark's work buddy who somehow reintegrated himself and remembers a blended version of the Innie and Outie's experiences. Petey's escape from Lumon's grips sets off a chain reaction of chaos and questions, making him a crucial and tragic figure in the story. And we gotta talk about Harmony Cobel, played by Patricia Arquette. She's the boss who's pretty much basically a walking HR violation. He spies on employees, prays to some weird corporate shrine, and is constantly one evil laugh away from being a straight-up villain. Meanwhile, the show is wrapped up in this creepy retro aesthetic like an office stuck in a time loop from the 80s. Sterile white walls, maze hallways, and technology that looks like disco had a baby with a floppy disk. But don't let the vibe fool you. Severance isn't just about office politics or no shit like that. It's actually a deep dive into identity, free will, and whether work is stealing your soul or not. There are some more characters that I skipped over, like Mark's pregnant sister Devin, who has her baby there, her husband Rick and the author, the midwife Alexis, and the security guy Grainer. So let's ask some questions here. What does Lumon even do? Why are the workers so obsessed with Keir Egan? I mean, bro just shows up to your work on some Nintendo shit and does this. Talking about people needing him all over the world. Isn't the guy dead? Is Lumon experimenting with consciousness? What is the goat symbolism? What is the egg symbolism? What's the hidden meaning behind all of this? And that's why we're here, to start the journey on answering some of these questions. Now, here at Real Enigmas and Theories, I point out the esoteric symbolism and give a breakdown on specific chains that continue to show up in the show. I noticed the egg motifs on this show, the one-eye symbolism, the black goo, the milkman symbolism, the obvious but not so obvious hints at consciousness, and the heavy goat symbolism, along with the esoteric notes of American history, hidden references to the American economy, debt slave system, and fiat currency. We're going to cover all of that. But first, I wanted to point out something very interesting that I noticed about the cast versus character connections within the series. I noticed that Mark Scout's birth date is April 3rd, 1978. This set of numbers has been referenced in so many shows lately. It's a very important date in the hit MGM show From, and there are a lot more similarities with the show From, and I'm going to point out a few more of those. I'm working on a video for that goes deeper into the interweaving symbolism in many shows, and I'll cover some of that then. But this particular mention of 1978 is very specific with the April 3rd date. The 50th Academy Awards were held on April 3rd, 1978. And the movie that won Best Picture was Annie Hall, in which Christopher Walken, who plays Bert, plays Annie Hall's brother Dwayne. The funny thing is, the character Christopher Walken plays in Annie Hall makes a strange confession that bears a resemblance to the scene where Irv is driving to go find Bert and Miss Cobel passes by him in her car. I mean, the scenes even have the same aesthetic, with the nighttime driving, the wet streets, the lights shining up off the pavement. All of it's kind of very similar. The crazy shit is that the car that Irv is driving in the scene is also a 1978 Chevy Nova, which brings us right back to 1978. Another hidden nod to those set of numbers is when all four of the Macrodata refinement team are looking at Ricken's book, and Mark reads a passage that ends off saying, "My friends, the hour is yours." And Dylan finishes the sentence for Mark, but following it up by saying that page 197 slaps. Now here's a little bit of numerology. Check this out. The last word in the passage was yours. And when the word your is broken down with the Pythagorean numerology system, the root number becomes 8. Page 197 and the number 8 placed esoterically together within the dialogue. That's just a little warm-up before we get into it. But beyond the office drama, Severance is a masterclass in exploring the nature of consciousness. By separating the Innie and Outie selves, the show forces us to question what truly makes us who we are. Are we defined by our memories, our choices, or the roles that we play? The Innie's existence raises ethical questions about autonomy and free will, while they live solely to work without any input from their Outie counterpart. Meanwhile, the Outies treat their Innies like tools rather than people, creating a chilling commentary on how modern society dehumanizes workers. I remember I suggested Severance to a friend of mine, and he said he hated it because it made him think of his job. I'm still trying to get bro to get past the first episode. It's been about a year. The split between the Innie and Outie selves dives into the concept of a fragmented identity. Can you truly be a whole person if a part of your consciousness is severed from your experiences? The show deals with whether the Innie, with no access to outside office life, should even be considered a full person with rights and desires of their own. We see this real heavy with Helly. It holds a mirror up to society and forces us to ask, how much of ourselves are we giving away in the name of work? And what's left when you clock out? Now, Mrs. Cobel is one of the characters on the show who's all about finding how deep that answer will take you. She seems to be conducting her own experiment about the efficacy of the severance procedure and if certain emotions can restart the severed person's memories. The security guy Grainer seems to be on board with all of her ideas. He's obviously got the hots for her too. I think that Miss Cobel has interfered by forcing multiple interactions with Miss Casey and Mark, knowing the history between them two on the outside. I also think that she's been working on Irv and Bert to see what becomes of their situation. As I stated before, Bert's affection towards Irv suggests that his preference is something that he shares with his Outie and his Innie. And we find out that Irv's Outie actually knows where Bert lives and has been documenting the whereabouts of other employees. I think that she has also tampered with the intake process of Helly R to disrupt the normal orientation to see how well the severance procedure takes. For instance, peep how the word last is marked out and replaced with the word final. The terms last and final are often used interchangeably but have major differences depending on the context. Last refers to the most recent in a sequence or the one that came before the current one, as in the latest. The interchangeable part is when it's meant to express the remaining, like the last in the cookie jar. Final pretty much emphasizes on conclusiveness, indicating that something is absolutely at its end, suggesting that there will be no more after this point. I also believe that Helly's intake process not going along with the protocol is why we find her in more of a rebellious nature. Perhaps Harmony Cobel interfered with Helly's intake and changed a few words in the script so that it would offset the designed intake process in an attempt to prove that reintegration is possible. Grainer told Cobel that she should celebrate after he analyzed Petey's chip and proved that reintegration had taken place. Severed individuals are like children without any memory of anything outside, but they seem to emphasize different concepts, and some of it is dystopian in nature. Like Dylan saying that the people would have had to go underwater because things had gotten so bad outside. And Helly, fresh off the table, asking if she had been grown as food. Where would a severed Helly, who had just woken up from the chip implant, get a concept like that if she doesn't even know the color of her mother's eyes? Could that be an actual thing that she knows about from the outside? Think about it, right? How would Petey know about cubist form? And peep how they made sure to point that out with Mark asking him the question, how is Irv painting the testing floor elevator? Now, in the Lexington Letters, Peg Kincaid said that she started communicating with her Innie through a logographic language that she and her sister created when they were children. This proves Cobel to be right in her assumption. The reintegration process is something that Petey started before leaving Lumon so that his Outie could see what was going on the severed floor. And that caused him to get a sickness that blended the Innie and Outie experiences together. And Cobel was obviously trying to figure out the ins and outs of what was going on with Petey without her superiors knowing what was going on. Just like she didn't tell him about what happened to Helly. Now let's talk about what Lumon might actually be doing, specifically the hidden meaning of Macrodata refinement. Severance put out an ebook called the Lexington Letters. It also came with the MDR handbook, but the letters are about the experiences of Peg Kincaid, a severed employee at Lumon Industry who uncovers an unsettling connection between her work self and external events that are going on in the real world. In the story, Peg's Innie completes a microdata file named Lexington at 2:30 p.m. And just 2 minutes later at 2:32 p.m., a truck belonging to Domer Therapeutics, a competitor of Lumon, explodes in New York City, resulting in multiple fatalities. Peg is in Topeka, Kansas, which is a Wizard of Oz reference, by the way. And Peg Kincaid refers to the decision to take the severance procedure as a no-brainer or half-brainer, referencing the scarecrow. She writes about taking some classes in Kansas State, which bears the abbreviation of KS, much like the abbreviated names of the severed employees who are the debt slaves. This bears a direct reference to the Great Depression and the beginning of the use of fiat currency in the United States. In 1933, the United States passed the Emergency Banking Act that stopped allowing the exchange of citizen currency to gold. In 1933 happens to be the year of death for the founder Keir Egan, and his birth year is 1865, which is the year of the National Banking Act, which brought the exchange of notes into existence and established the framework of the banking system well into the 20th century. Fiat means to do work or bring forth, and the term fiat lux is translated to let there be light, as in lumen, or luminous, or illuminated, or Illuminati. Lumen is also a phonetic brethren to the word lubricate, and we can see the drop of liquid in the Lumen logo, along with the global ellipsoid referencing the Vesica Pisces. The Vesica Pisces is known as the Great Portal, and the word lumen also means an opening or portal or window. Mark even has two fish that represent the Vesica Pisces as well. The liquid reference is dope because it reaches back to the Wizard of Oz references to point out that the wicked witch who represented one of the international banking systems had to be liquidated, or they poured water on her. Couple that with OZ or Oz being the abbreviation for ounces, gold being the yellow brick road, and silver being the original material of the slippers. Toto is the Latin word for total. In this show, making the straw man, brainless, and Kansas references pull it all together. These Wizard of Oz references have been popping up in everything lately, along with the references to fiat currency. I'll tell you, that hidden hand must be proud. I'm going to cover some of that stuff in later videos. Esoteric nods to Freemasonry, Lumon, above and below, along with the goats, bring me to thoughts about the numbers that MDR used to refine this so-called data. Employees are tasked with refining raw data that appears on their computer screen, and this involves isolating and categorizing numbers that evoke strong emotional responses like fear, MDR's work may involve erasing or suppressing certain aspects of consciousness, possibly linked to external events or memories, or perhaps they're actually controlling events, politics, and maybe even sporting events. And if they're using numbers to do this, then it has something to do with math. And the hidden significance to this would be tied directly to the goats, which is another nuance popping up in everything lately. And with the cult-like vibes of Lumon, the hidden hand of Hollywood would surely insert the Baphomet symbolism into a show like Severance. MDR dealing with numbers and the possible knowledge or control of outside events, this provides a hidden meaning with the presence of goats and the nuance of the Baphomet. In Greek, we can break down Baphomet into two words that come together as a phrase. Baph, translating to bathe or baptize, and metis, meaning metrics or math, Baphometis, bathed in mathematics, or baptized in the knowledge of mathematics. Moreover, using the Atbash cipher to decode the word Baphomet, we reveal the Greek word Sophia, written in right to left in Hebrew. Sophia is also celebrated in the Kabbalah, which is a part of Jewish mysticism, just like the Atbash cipher. Baphomet spelled backwards is Tem of Ab, which can be broken down into Latin. Templi, Omnium, Hominum, Passis, Abbas, which translates to the God of the Temple of Peace of all men, known as the Temple of Solomon, which circles us right back to Solomon, who speaks of Sophia in the Bible. Even Dylan can be seen posing the as above, so below gesture. So the data being sorted out is knowledge. Even the hangman symbolism with Helly, like Odin hanging himself on a transportation tree for knowledge. I mean, these hidden meanings with the symbolism of this show is very impressive. You've got biblical references in the Baphomet with MDR sorting numbers. The fiat system nods with the birth and the death year of Keir. The 1978 number sequences. The sacred egg and fertility symbolism is everywhere. You got pregnant women experiencing childbirth. Mark smashes one of the midwives. The milkman is feeding baby goats while Miss Selvage is coaching Devin on breastfeeding. I wonder if Miss Cobel has children too. We got the deviled egg party. Keir's favorite breakfast was raw eggs. The optics and design team was having an egg drop contest. And the Vesica Pisces symbolism is directly connected to the egg nuances, just like Mark's two fishes are connected to the Vesica Pisces. The 5 questions given to Helly in the preamble also give us some hidden meanings to American history, which is fitting, being that Mark was an actual history teacher. The only answer Helly was able to give Mark was Delaware. The Delaware River and Bay were named by European settlers, and the name was subsequently applied to the indigenous Lenape tribe based on their proximity to the river and the bay named after Delaware. In 1626, Dutch settlers led by Pete Minuit, were famously said to have purchased the island of Manhattan from the Lenape tribe, who likely viewed the exchange as a temporary agreement, granting the Dutch the right to use the land, but not exclusive ownership, because the Lenape tribe didn't even have a concept of land ownership. The Dutch, however, interpreted that transaction in the terms of permanent ownership, reflecting their European legal traditions. And when European settlers started interacting with the Lenape tribe in the 17th century, handshakes became a shared gesture of greeting and diplomacy, particularly during treaty signings and negotiations. Now, peep when Cobel anoints Mark as the department chief, the word chief, and tells him that a handshake is available upon request. And she does this during the key exchange. Here's a few other thoughts I had to drop. I think there were many more other severed people other than the ones who worked for Lumon, We know the woman who was giving birth at the retreat was severed. She didn't even remember her interaction with Devin, and her husband put the brakes on their conversation with the quickness. He seems to be a political ally with Lumon. Ricken's friends seem to be severed, being that they act like children, and Rebecca has some kind of scar in the back of her head, maybe from the severance procedure itself. Ricken seems to have the same effect on the workers on the severed floor as he has on his own friend group. He also seems to be in disapproval of the severance procedure and might covertly be working against Lumon. I mean, he was worried about that book being stolen, and that book was a game changer. He also played with the idea that Mark's Innie would answer the phone, and even suggested that Mark plays hooky from work, which he actually does. Did Ricken know about that? That brings me to another point. What if Ricken is not alone in his endeavor against Lumon? We know there are at least two groups who are against the severance procedure. You had that one group that was standing outside passing flyers, and Mark was arguing with the young bull that day. And whoever is working with Regabi, they seem to be more serious, but openly against the severance procedure as well. You have that covert alliance between Cobel and Grainer, and we have no idea who else she was working with or who else he was working with. We also know that Irving is up to something as well with his knowledge of the testing floor elevator and a list of other separate employees, and we have no idea who he's working with. So, at the time of me doing this video, it's one day before the premiere of season 2. So I had to drop something before all the fire starts. All the way from the Masonic symbolism with Keir and Mrs. Cobel having matching checker patterns on their bedroom floors, to Irv cussing out Milchick. That was my favorite part of the whole season. Severance definitely has me with high expectations for the return. So if you like this video, tap that screen a few times and do all that good YouTube stuff by liking, sharing, and letting the world know that you're rocking with the real Enigmas and Theories. And if you're not subscribed yet, I hope this is the video to make you do it. Anyway, just a little something to think about while we wait on the next episode. That's all for my video today. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.